100 men versus a single silverback gorilla. What do you think the odds are for either side? It doesn't actually matter what you answer because the internet thinks you're wrong. People have been debating the qualifications of any given human to beat a wild animal for like decades. I feel like it was a year ago that somebody reported on Instagram, which isn't really reporting if you think about it, that 7% of people think they could take on a grizzly bear. 1v1. That means if you have 10 friends, there's a good chance one of them thinks they could beat a bear. Now, 1v1 is stupid. I don't think there's any wild animal that I would put my money on a guy beating other than like a really slow ostrich. But there's something about the number of 100 people that has really levied the sides of this gorilla versus human debate. Because on one hand, a gorilla is a machine of muscle, but on the other hand, 100 dudes is a lot of dudes. This calls back to an even earlier meme that basically states what would happen if you pit 1 trillion lions against the sun. Now, obviously the sun is like an unfathomably large thing, but the number 1 trillion is also an unfathomably large amount of lions. I mean, I can't do the math in my head, and therefore I do hesitate to wonder, could 1 trillion lions overtake the sun? Like if they attacked at night, you know? Now here's the thing. People have run the numbers. 1 trillion lions is not enough lions to accumulate and amass that would do anything to the sun. They would vaporize. I don't even think the sun would realize. 1v1 versus a grizzly bear, that's just stupid. You have no weapons to deal with a bear. Even if you kicked it in the nuts, a single swipe or bite from that thing, you are incapacitated and the fight is over. But a gorilla does not have claws. And the key factor here, there are 100 dudes. 100. Surely it is not as simple as gorilla big, therefore gorilla win. They're not that big. I have a lot to say about this, by the way. Before we break down what I think is the stupidest hypothetical I've spent any amount of time doing genuine research to try to have an insightful opinion on, I want to give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, Into the AM. Into the AM has just recently launched their new relaxed button-up collection, a 4-way stretch fiber with a relaxed fit. It's UPF 30+ sun protectant, so you don't need to worry about wearing it in the sun, and it's both moisture wicking and quick drying, which makes this the ultimate summer vibe. They have a bunch of different collections. They have a bunch of different styles that you can pick from. It is the best thing to pick up if you want to have something to wear now that the weather is getting hot, and you can pick that up alongside any of the graphic tees you see me wearing in these videos using my link in the description for an additional 10% off your entire order. A big shout out to Into the AM. Why are we talking about trying to beat up wild animals? As I explained in the intro, we've been doing that for decades. But a gorilla specifically against 100 guys is because somebody tweeted that he thought it could happen. A little earlier this week, somebody tweeted out, I think 100 dudes could beat 1 gorilla. Everybody just gotta be dedicated to that shit. This tweet now has 200 million views. A lot of people have thrown their hat into the conversation about what they think would happen if 100 guys decided to take on a gorilla, and I think the vast majority of them are dead wrong. Now, first of all, let's get the smooth brain take out of the way. Let's get the obvious knee-jerk reaction out of the way, which is gorilla is big animal. Tons of muscle. And obviously, the immediate thought, the funniest thing, the one that most of the memes have been centering around, is the concept that the second the gorilla gets their hand on the first of 100 dudes and rips him open like a ketchup packet at Five Guys, the other 99 are going to be completely dazed and amazed at the strength of this thing, and then all hell is going to break loose, and they're going to stand no chance. And to be fair, the memes are funny. Here's what I see people doing on the internet to defend the take that the gorilla would win. And to be fair, I don't think you're completely wrong. I just feel like everybody's jumping to the easiest possible answer. They're quoting every stat they possibly can about gorillas and then showing like horrendous monkey attacks of baboons in India to show how ferocious a gorilla could hypothetically be. They're saying gorillas can lift 10 times their body weight and they can weigh up to 600 pounds. They can stand 6 feet tall. Sure, all of that is true. But, however, I feel like people are underestimating how dumb gorillas are, and I don't mean intellectually. They're smart creatures as far as primates are concerned, right? But a gorilla's muscle, the size of that thing, completely comes to like supporting its own body. I'm not joking, I have been watching gorilla fights, gorillas fighting other gorillas and like fighting other animals in like captivity and stuff, whatever footage is available on Daily Motion, because I can't find anything on YouTube, and they are useless fighters. I am watching gorilla versus gorilla combat. Gorillas can weigh like 500 pounds. They could lift 2,000, right? I have not seen a single gorilla pick up another gorilla. I haven't seen them pick up anything. Surely they should be able to easily toss you straight across the room, right? Has not happened a single time. I don't think they know how. Like, yeah, theoretically, a gorilla's mass and the muscle it contains is perfectly capable of lifting up a 2,000-pound boulder, but that's not something they do. They walk around on their fists. Do they even understand this motion? I think realistically, they don't even know how to throw a punch. I've been watching videos, and these guys just kind of lunge forward like a zombie with their arms in front of them. Like, yeah, it's dangerous when it's 600 pounds, but you're not knocking out Mike Tyson like that. You know what I mean? They say a gorilla's hand is so big, it's got the grip force. I've seen quotes of like 1,500 pounds of grip force. They say it's enough to be able to crush your skull instantly, which I'm sure is true, hypothetically, but I've never seen a gorilla crush a rock, let alone a coconut, let alone another gorilla it's been in a fight with. Again, I don't think they have the mechanics to utilize that muscle. Lastly, I have seen people talk about bite force, because this is really what highlights the fact that nobody is actually thinking about this logistically. Why would you? It's a stupid hypothetical. But people are taking a look at a gorilla, an herbivore, and then trying to quote its bite force as if that has anything to do with it. A gorilla is never going to try to bite you. If it gets its hands on you, you've seen the footage I've shown you of them fighting much larger than a human-sized gorillas. They're not trying to bite the thing. They're mostly trying to shove them aside like they're in a nightclub with their shoulders and forearms. Again, these things aren't trained fighters. Even if they do have a tremendous amount of muscle, they don't know how to use it. I feel like I need to highlight the importance of functional muscle functionality of the strength that you have available to you, right? Because at the end of the day, this is going to be 100 guys versus one thing. Who do you think wins in a fight between a tiger and a goose? Similar situation, right? One is like 10 times the size of the other, has claws, has teeth, could absolutely rip apart a goose, and a goose honks, right? That's all it's got. Who do you think wins? Turns out I found footage of this. Now listen, am I going to take a look at that and say that a goose beats a tiger? Absolutely not. Obviously that's not true. But the reality is that in this situation, the tiger decided that it wanted nothing to do with the goose, right? And the goose adequately defended itself in that situation, but the tiger didn't use the tools at its advantage, right? Tigers do not hunt things by themselves. They work in packs, and if you take away the pack, it's not exactly the apex predator that you would imagine it was. Again, realistically, it could take out the goose, but if we're just gonna take a look at situations where anything could happen, you end up with the goose winning sometimes. I mean, there's video footage of it. To adequately analyze 100 guys versus a single gorilla, we need to look at it in apex optimal situation, right? The gorilla is ready to fight. The 100 guys are not running around like chickens with their heads cut off at the mere sight of one of their dudes getting smashed into bone dust, okay? Everybody's ready to fight the other thing. What happens then? Last little tidbit I feel like we need to talk about is the fact that people are not making a fair comparison of the 100 guys and the one gorilla. Everybody is describing the gorilla. They're saying they can weigh 500-600 pounds, lift 2,000 pounds, bite force, grip strength, 6 feet tall. Did you know that the average gorilla weighs somewhere between 300 and 450 pounds? We can remedy that to about 375, right? That's half the weight of what people are saying. People are saying a 600 plus pound gorilla. The largest gorilla we have ever discovered ever was like 20 or 50 years ago. Doesn't exist anymore and weighed like 600 plus pounds. We are taking the largest gorilla we have ever discovered and planting it into this situation. The strongest gorilla, the highest bite force. We are making the optimal John Jones of gorillas to represent the gorilla, right? So I think it's only fair that if we're gonna pick 100 dudes, we also get apex humans, right? We're not doing random Tom, your neighbor that weighs 165 pounds soaking wet. No, we have the absolute perfect gorilla, best stats, 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100 NBA gorilla. Surely, if we're gonna do 100 guys, they should also be perfect ultimate humans, right? To put that into perspective, if we went with a 600 pound gorilla, we could probably realistically go with 100 butter beans, right? A little under 400 pounds? That's not that big of a difference, is it? And again, there are 100 of him, and this is not an unfair comparison. Again, we are picking the best stats that have ever been recorded for every gorilla ever, and that's what people are saying the average gorilla is like. If you want to pick average humans, we're talking a 375 pound gorilla. There are dudes that weigh that much. Tai Tuivasa weighs that much. So let's say one perfect gorilla, 6.5 feet tall, 600 pounds, has the bite and lift force of everything that you can Google, the absolute maximum of a gorilla, right? To make a fair comparison, let's make it simple and go with 100 butter beans or 100 Francis Ngannous or whoever. Somebody who's up at 350 something pounds, right? Tyson Fury, whatever, right? That situation, the mass, just the mass alone. They don't even need to be trained boxers who could repeatedly hit this thing and eventually cause some damage to the gorilla. Because you're not biting through their skin. You're not going to be able to like poke its eyes out. I don't think that's going to result in a win realistically. It's going to have to be sheer mass. But 100 butter beans at 380 something pounds, we are talking 38,000 pounds of human. Even if the gorilla is capable of lifting 2,000 pounds, that's the equivalent of like 4 guys. And that's, I'm imagining, absolute perfect power cleaning form if a gorilla could do that. 4 butter beans grab one of its arm, I highly doubt that gorilla is going to be able to lift what is the equivalent of 1,600 pounds with one arm. And keep in mind, there's going to be 4 of those dudes on his other arm. The legs are kind of useless. They're small and stumpy. And there are still 92 more butter beans to deal with. Are we thinking this through? Let's say realistically, the gorilla can just like do a giant swipe and instantly kill 4 of the guys, right? Let's say that's a thing it could do. Keep in mind, he's only about 200 pounds heavier than any one of these dudes. And keep in mind, we have seen gorillas take full-on punches and rams from other gorillas, and those dudes, again, are only a couple 100 pounds more than Butterbean. If a gorilla can take repeated hits, and these fights can go on for like 45 seconds, surely a human or two could take one before instantly dying. But even if you assume not, this gorilla has to repeat this swipe over and over like 50 times before he's decimated 100 guys. Every one of these gorilla fights I have seen have completely dismissed after 30 seconds. I do not think, even if this gorilla has insta-kill active, he is getting through 50 of them before eventually getting tired. And I feel like nobody factors in getting tired. I see people memeing this. They're like, oh, humans think because they have endurance they can take on a gorilla. There's 100 guys! Now let's assume that the gorilla doesn't have insta-kill. What I would think is the realistic situation. If the gorilla swipes one of these dudes, hits him in the chest or the arms, maybe he knocks over 1 or 2. I highly doubt he's knocking over 4 at a time. What happens when one of them grabs his arm? 400 something pounds, and the gorilla's got 2 arms and pretty useless legs. I would argue it's over. 2 guys grab the arms, drag this thing to the ground, maybe a couple guys tackle him, less than 10 butter beans, and this gorilla officially has 4,000 pounds of weight just weighing him down. I understand you think they could lift 2,000-3,000 pounds, but not from laying on your back or being held down. No shot. Maybe they could lift a log, and that's how we even measured that they could lift that much, but not pushing off of your back. They never do that in nature. They don't have muscles there. And then what are the other 90 guys gonna do? Even if 10 of them get killed, eventually the next 10, the next 10, the next 10, somebody is gonna grab the arms of this thing and take down the gorilla. And then there's like 50 more guys who could just start pummeling. I don't know, like eventually it's gonna go down. I don't even think you'd need 100. If we're doing a fair comparison of the average human in this situation to the average gorilla in this situation, I just don't see it happening. Factoring in that my math is obviously perfect, we can tone it down to averages. Instead of a 7-foot tall, 600-pound gorilla, let's go with the average 350, 375-pound gorilla and the average 180-pound guy or whatever, right? The math still ends up about the same. I know it seems ridiculous, but 100 is just too big of a number, and I feel like nobody factors in that a gorilla has 2 arms that it kinda has to support itself on, and then that's it. I don't know, maybe I'm stupid. Like, it is possible that the gorilla just goes absolutely apeshit and just starts smacking heads straight off of people's shoulders, but I just haven't seen that happen ever. Gorillas have killed 0 humans. Every footage that I have found of gorillas fighting something have been relatively lackluster and have lasted 30 seconds at most. I don't even think they have the endurance to kill 100 people in a row without getting tired. Not from my research. Let me know what you guys think down in the description. I mean, enough people have seen this thing and have been talking about this thing. I feel like too many people are just going, the gorilla wins, end of situation. I could never kill a chimpanzee, therefore gorilla wins. I feel like nobody's factoring in the actual logistics of 100 dudes and actually factoring in, if you're gonna take the biggest gorilla, you gotta pick the biggest human. It's only fair. Thank you so much for watching me ramble about this. Please check out the link in the description to pick up something from Into the AM. A big thank you to the patrons scrolling in the back, and I will catch you guys later this week, yeah? Spisu.